Hey guys, it's Sebastian from AskSebby, and today we are going to talk about where to put your money for your emergency funds. I've seen a lot of people put it somewhere that does not make any sense to me, and we'll cover why. Before I dive into this though, let me know down below where you put your money for your emergency funds, and also if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. For me, there's two places that you should not put your emergency fund, and this is going to be in your room or physically, and also into the financial markets. The reason you don't want it physically in your room is because something can happen to that money. What happens if someone robs you, or what happens if there's a fire? In both of those situations, you would probably want to pull into your emergency fund because something in your life happened and you need that money. But if it all burned down, even if you put it somewhere a bit safe, you never really know. To me, having this money electronically is a lot safer because you are protected by the bank in case something happens, assuming you have less than $250,000 in that account. If you wanted to minimize this risk, you could also put it into various accounts as long as you hit the minimums to get the fees waived. Jumping into the number two place I think is very bad for your emergency fund, you have the financial markets. The reason this is bad is because these markets can fluctuate quite a bit. When you invest, you're looking into the 1 year, 10 years, long term. You're not really looking at the 1 day, 1 week mark. A good example of this is someone who loses their job. Let's say you're someone who works in banking and the financial market ends up crashing like we saw a few years ago, 10 years ago at this point, and you are in a position where you don't have a job, so you need that money, but you also can't sell your shares because the market has tanked. You're left with the choice of either selling what you bought at half of its value or basically becoming homeless. To me, the best place for rainy day funds are going to be high yield checking and savings accounts. So these are typically not going to be ones with branches. These are mostly going to be online ones. The big reason is because when you think of branches, they're expensive for rent, you have to hire employees, there's a lot of cost to that, and with the online ones, they end up passing those costs to you as interest. There's a lot of different choices here, the popular ones being Discover, Ally, and Marcus by Goldman Sachs. On kind of a similar note, we do have a bunch of different savings accounts on our site. If you want to learn more about them and you want to support our channel, go check them out. One of the really big benefits of these accounts is that they have relatively low minimums. This means that you can diversify in case you're worried that, let's say, Discover goes under or something crazy happens and you can't get your money from them. I realize that that's one of the big things that people are worried about with online banks, that if something happens, they can't easily access the money. So for you, it might make sense to have a Discover one as well as a Marcus one. That way you are a bit more diversified. When you compare these interest rates with a lot of other banks, you can see that they are substantially higher. You're looking at something like 2% versus less than 1%. If your emergency fund is $10,000, 2% of that is still going to be $200. I would rather take $200 versus not having that $200. For most people, I recommend 3 to 12 months as their emergency fund, but it really just depends on where they work, their industry, and also the type of position they work in. Usually the higher up you are, the longer it takes to find a new job, which sounds really weird because you would think that the more experience you have, the easier it is, but that's not necessarily the case. If you're someone with a 3-month emergency fund, I think these savings accounts make a lot of sense and they're easy picks. But if you're someone with a 12-month, it might make sense to look into other instruments that might offer even more interest. And the main reason is because you'll have time to pull the money out, because you might have some of it in the savings accounts or checking accounts, and then the rest in these other vehicles. Good examples of this are going to be CD accounts, which are certificate of deposit ones. The main difference is that they typically have higher interest rates, but you can't withdraw them outside of a specific period. So when you park that money, you might have to park it for 12 months or 6 months or some period of time. And then if you try to withdraw it earlier, you're going to have to pay penalties. If you're working with a 12-month emergency fund, you might have 6 months with Marcus, and then you might have 6 months with a CD account. That way you can pull that money if you need to, if stuff hits the fan. One final thing is I would recommend not using your credit cards as your emergency fund. I get that idea, I get how tempting it might be, especially if you have a 0% balance transfer offer, but this is how I've seen a lot of people get into a lot of debt. They end up building a very good credit profile, they have maybe $50,000 of credit limit on a card with a 0% balance transfer offer, and then they max it out. And you can easily get into $50,000, $100,000 in debt by doing stuff like this. If you have to do it, that's fine, but make sure that you aggressively pay that off as soon as possible. The biggest trap that you can get into is thinking that the money that you have at 0% is money that is actually yours. Remember that you're borrowing this money and they want that money back. Again, if you are looking for high yield accounts or if you're looking for CDs, we do have a bunch of these on our site. Pretty easy way to support our channel. Hopefully that was helpful. Let me know if you guys have any questions. My question for you guys is, how do you think about your emergency fund? What is it in? Is it mostly cash? Is it in these high yield accounts? Or do you just keep it with the big banks? Let me and the community know down below. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. It really helps us out. If you know anyone else who'd benefit from what we just talked about, feel free to share this with them because it's probably going to help them out. But otherwise, hope you guys liked it. See you guys next time.